Welcome to the webinar on biodiversity and nature-based solutions that Wageningen University is organizing together with our partners that you can see at the top of the slides. In a bit, I will mention them. We are pleased to have so many registrations. This shows that more and more people are inspired towards a nature-based future and in integrating nature-based thinking in their work. A nature-based approach is crucial to reverse biodiversity loss and combat the effects of climate change. Well, let me start with mentioning the partners that we have in this webinar before we go to the program. We work together with the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, Arcadis, Meta, and World Food Forum that will include this webinar on their Masterclass webpage. And last but not least, we work together with youth network partners that will also provide the voices of youth in this webinar. So we have the Future for Nature Academy, the Restoration Stewards of Youth in Landscapes, the Dutch Youth Council, the NGR, the International Association of Students in Agriculture and Related Sciences, and the Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Network. Welcome everybody, welcome partners, and welcome visitors. Last year, we organized the Nature-Based Solutions Challenge, and next year, we will start the Nature-Based Future Challenge. In between, we organized 3 webinars, and this is the first in line. So what is our program? My name is Mirjam Troost. I work for the Student Challenge team of Wageningen University and Research, and I will work together today with David Mornout. He will moderate the session. So David, if you want, you can appear on screen. David is currently working at Meta and recently graduated at Wageningen University and Research. We will start this program with 3 keynotes. First, we hear Liesje Mommer from Wageningen University and Research. Then we have Cas Dinjens from our partner Arcadis. And then Wouter Ubbink will speak. He is the UN Youth Representative for Biodiversity and Food. After the 3 keynotes, we will hear from 3 youth-led projects. First of all, we have Samara Polwata. She will talk about her project School Meets the Reef in Sri Lanka. Then Levis Sirikwa, he's from Kenya, and he will talk about mangrove restoration solutions. Then Caleb Ofori Boateng, he's from Ghana, and he is very special, the first person to work on amphibian conservation in West Africa. So please stay tuned to hear these stories. Every presentation of the youth-led projects will be followed by a reflection by the panel. The panel are the keynote speakers. And we also want to invite the audience, that's you, to post your questions in the chat after each speech. Well, we will, at the quarter, this session will take place for 1 hour and 15 minutes. So in the end, I will announce some more things about the Nature-Based Future Challenge that we will organize next year. So over to you, David.
Yes, thanks, Mirjam. So thanks all, welcome once again. I'm very happy to introduce the first speaker of today, which is Liesje Mommer. We will start today with an informative presentation on biodiversity and people in the landscape. Liesje is a full professor at Wageningen University, but also leading the Wageningen Biodiversity Initiative. This is a recent new initiative. It's a network of scientists and stakeholders that works on developing and implementing nature-inclusive solutions in the food system, in the landscape, and in societies. So Liesje, I'm very happy to have you here, and please take the floor to kick off this first webinar. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I see in the chat that we are reaching the whole world. So I'm really excited to see that there is so much interest. So as a take-home message, nature-based solutions are great as long as biodiversity and people in the landscape are recognized. So you can also log off now. You have heard the central message, but I will expand a bit more on that thought. So what is biodiversity? So biodiversity is the variation in species, as you see here nicely depicted across all the continents, but not only on land, but also on sea. I think there is a beautiful amount of organisms living in the sea. Think only on coral reefs and the beautiful types of whales that we have around. It's not only the species, it's also the genotype, so the variation within the species, but it's also the diversity of ecosystems that we mean with biodiversity. And we really need that for a functioning planet. And you may have heard that the state of biodiversity is alarming. So we are really losing biodiversity at an alarming rate. There is no discussion anymore by scientists whether this is the case. We are losing biodiversity, and in a way that we are really threatening our own society. So System Earth will continue without us, but we won't survive if we don't be able to bend the curve of biodiversity. And I feel we really can make a difference. We are able to just change the tides if we start really working with nature. So make more space for nature. So make sure that we have more increased conservation efforts, but also, and it's important, that we have more sustainable production, more sustainable consumption, and that we really start with building or thinking in a nature positive, on a nature-based way. It's not only biodiversity loss that is concerning me in the night, but there is also climate change. So we all know also that climate change is accelerating. There is this target of 1.5 degrees, and we really have to work hard to keep it beyond. And the news is speaking so much about melting ice and increasing sea levels that is really of concern. And it's important also to realize that these two things reinforce each other. So more biodiversity loss leads to more climate change and vice versa. And you can see this nicely, I think, in these figures. So and it's also making the case of the importance in agriculture in our food system. So agriculture is responsible for 80% of the global deforestation. And in these degraded systems, there is also more greenhouse gas emissions coming from these systems. So biodiversity loss leads to increased greenhouse gas emissions. And the land degrades, things can't grow anymore, and this is the feedback loops that I was referring to. Then nature-based solutions come in, and there is a whole bunch of definitions out there, and they have some interesting variation, some interesting diversity, I would say. So one of the definitions that is taking, that is prominent is that nature-based solutions are solutions that are inspired and supported by nature and should be cost-effective with economic benefits. And of course, we have to be able to pay for it to make it happen. But I think in this definition, a very important aspect is missing, and this and that is incorporated in the definition from the IUCN that define nature-based solutions as solutions that leverage nature and the power of healthy ecosystems to protect people. And I think that is really important, that people have a central place in the nature-based solution, because I feel that part of the biodiversity loss that we are seeing today is because we are, as human beings, are disconnected from nature. So I really hope that if we start nature-based thinking, that the people are are central in that thinking. Rather than having the definitions only, there is always a lot of rumor about greenwashing. So there's a lot of sayings that nature-based solutions is just greenwashing, and big companies saying they do some good stuff for the planet with nature, but at the same time continue their business as usual, and they keep emitting greenhouse gas emissions. I think that is of concern. We really have to make sure we are starting to go into the right direction and with nature, inspired by nature, but also respecting the nature. We really have to go in that direction and just stopping the things going in the wrong direction. So we should focus on nature-based futures, but stop, doing the bad things. I think it's something that we always have to be aware of, and by doing so, we will be able to make things better. And I think, given the fact that we have this double crisis of biodiversity loss and climate change, the real nature-based solutions take this into account together. So it's a double crisis, I tend to say, and we have to make sure that the solutions that we provide solve both. And by doing so, so we should avoid the bad and harnessing the good. So that means that a good nature-based solution makes sure that there is climate mitigation and adaptation and biodiversity involved. And I think it's interesting to see this figure, this complex figure from IPCC and IPBES, and what it basically says that if you take measures for biodiversity, as you can see here in the bottom, so the lower panel shows that the actions, what actions that you can take for biodiversity, they are, and what is their effect on the climate. So the upper panel is the climate actions for climate and their effect on biodiversity, and the lower panel is the actions of biodiversity and their effect on climate. And you see in the upper graph there are many red lines, and the red lines are not good. The blue lines are the good ones. And you see that the actions for biodiversity only have a few red lines and many blue lines. And so this is not a one-to-one, but it's really important to realize that any nature-based solution should be good for us, at least trying to find the right balance. And I think that a second aspect that is important in this, as I said already in the very beginning, it's not only about climate mitigation, adaptation, and biodiversity. It's also really important to construct and to develop these nature-based solutions in connection with local communities, because it's the people in the landscape that will have to live with it, and it's important that they also have a say in it. And it's not only some companies that make some money, but that there's really, that these nature-based solutions are embedded in the landscape, and the people are really living the landscape. And that is my last slide. So thank you so much for listening.
Thanks a lot, Liesje. That was very informative and inspirational. And I fully agree that nature-based solutions should be about climate, biodiversity, and people, at least. Let's move on to some biodiversity and nature-based solutions, nature-based approaches in practice. I'm welcoming Cas Dingens from Arcadis. Cas is a marine ecologist, but next to that, he has been involved in the nature-based solutions that we have been organizing at Wageningen. He has been mentoring the team School Meets the Reef. You will hear more about that later.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon. Thank you, David. I thank you, Liesje, for your presentation about the nature-based solutions and the introduction. My name is Cas Dingens, and I work at Arcadis, which is a consultancy firm, and I will show some projects in practice of nature-based solutions. And I will be doing a small quiz where you can vote whether you think it's a nature-based solution or not. And just a small, not an introduction, but maybe a bit similar to what Liesje said. When at Arcadis we talk about nature-based solutions, let's say differently. Nature can be used in a variety of ways. So you've got nature-derived solutions, nature-inspired solutions, which take inspiration from nature, for example, for the architecture, or nature-derived solutions which use natural sources, for example, wind or solar energy, and for the benefit of people. But today we'll be talking about nature-based solutions, and these nature-based solutions use the function of ecosystems and provide natural services to benefit both the environment, but also society, as Liesje said. And at Arcadis, the nature aspect in nature-based solutions is often caused by the use of sediment or vegetation in projects. And nature-based solutions can occur in combination with grey infrastructure. And these grey infrastructure are hard civil engineered infrastructure. For example, a dike, as you can see here on the left. And you can combine these with, for example, vegetation-based solutions as well. But sometimes you do need a grey infrastructure because you, for example, have to protect the land that lies behind the coast, and you need a dike. And at Arcadis, we often see nature-based solutions in 3 categories: cities, coasts, and rivers. And in cities, you can think about urban forests, for example, or urban farming. At coast, you can think of mangrove forest. I think that's a known example. Use mangrove forest to protect the coast, but also the people living behind it, and they can use that as well, the habitat over there. And in the Netherlands, you often see sandy shores as a nature-based solution. And for rivers, you can think of natural inland wetlands or river and stream renaturation. And in the Netherlands, you've got a big project called Room for the River, which falls in the last category. And then these nature-based solutions provide, well, a variety of services and benefits for, well, biodiversity and nature, but also social and economic values and aspects. And I think that's important to highlight. So now we move on to some case studies here that we've done at Arcadis. And I will be showing you an example of a project, and you can vote there whether you think it's a nature-based solution or not. You can do that as soon as you see the picture of the project, or you can maybe change your vote. I don't know if that's possible when I explain the project a little bit. And then we'll see what the answers say. I don't know if they are on the screen when I talk about them, but we'll see. So the first one is Markerwadde, which is in the Netherlands. And Markerwadde lies in Markermeer, which is a lake in the Netherlands. A very shallow lake where the water circulation is very poor. And there was a loss of habitats for bird species and fish species during all those years. And they created several islands to improve habitat and create new habitat for those birds and fish species and other species. And also people can use them for recreational value, and people can go to some of these islands for tourists, for example. So I'm wondering if you think this is a nature-based solution or not. I see that the polls are showing that it's nature-based. Most people agree that it's nature-based, and I agree with that as well, because there's a variety of, ecological, but also social and economic benefits to it. Then we move on to the next one, which is in Katwijk. And Katwijk is a city or village in the Netherlands close to the coast. And the coastal safety levels were lacking there. So they had to create a dike. And you can create a dike in front of the dunes or on top of the dunes. But what they did here was create a dike underneath the dunes, which protected the village. But also created some, as you can see here, some dune habitat in front and on top of the dike. But as you can see at the right picture, it's civil engineered as well. So there's really this great infrastructure part to it. And this dike also acts as a parking garage for local people, the residents, but also for tourists. So I'm wondering whether you think it's a nature-based solution here or not. And I can see that the polls are quite mixed, about 50-50. I think this is a good example of a nature-based solution with the use of grey infrastructure, like the combination. I can understand that there are some doubts here whether this is a proper nature-based solution or not. But I think you do create habitat, dune habitat, and you do provide a service for people, even though it's only a parking garage, but they can use it. And you still have the benefit of coastal protection, which is, of course, huge as well. Then we move on to the next one. It's also coastal protection, but at the other side of the Atlantic. in New York, Staten Island, and it's called Living Breakwaters. And as you can see the picture, it's quite gray and not a lot of nature. But to protect the area, they also put in these boxes at the right, you can see here, which contain shell fragments. And these shell fragments are used to attract fish species and to create breeding grounds. But as you can see, the main part of it is a gray infrastructure dike or what a breakwater. So I'm wondering what you think here. And I can see here that most people disagree, that they think it's not a nature-based solution, about 60 to 40%. And I agree with that as well. I think this is a start is made to become nature-based, as in sense of the nature part. It protects the people behind it, of course, but there's not a lot of added social value. And the nature part, they started with it by creating breeding ground for fish species, but I think you can do more by creating or also planting or introducing grasses, for example, or create salt marshes or whatever, and also improve the social aspect in this project. So I would say no to this this example. How long do we have left? I'll do the salt marshes as well. This is also in the Netherlands, at the north side of the Netherlands. It's a bit similar to Markerwadde. And due to sludge management and the morphodynamics at this area, the salt marshes were eroding away. So what they did here was create 15 hectares of salt marshes to provide breeding grounds for birds and other species, habitat for other species, and it's for use of recreational value for people. So yeah, I'm not wondering, I see that most people agree that this is a nature-based solution. I think so as well, but if you compare it to Markerwadde, for example, I think the social value and economic value here are a bit less than Markerwadde, but in the sense it's a nature-based solution. Then we move on to the next one, a mangrove island in Curaçao. And the mangrove islands of the mangroves were lost at Curaçao. And what they did here was create new mangrove islands, basically. And these mangroves provide a variety of services, such as biodiversity and coastal protection. People can use it for timber and fuel wood, as you can see in the top right there. And it was, yeah, so I'm seeing that people 100% agree that this is a nature-based solution. I think, of course, yes, it's a lot of nature-based, but it's basically nature restoration. So where at some point, when is it? Do you call nature restoration almost nature-based solution? I think it's I think yes, because you use nature in the solution. But if you destroy the mangrove forest in 5 years' time, and then after that you create a mangrove, it's nature-based. But is it? Yeah, it's nature restoration. So just think about it. But I think it's a nature-based solution. Then we move on to the last one, Rio Tietê Linear Park. It's in Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, and it's a channel there, and it's used for drink water and irrigation, and it goes through the city, and it's basically a concrete channel, but they starting to slowly develop it into a linear park along the banks of it. As you can see at the bottom here a little bit, you can see a bit of green, and these parks, the people and the communities can use for recreational as well. So yeah, I'm seeing that 2/3 think it's a nature-based solution. Well, it's declining now a little bit. I think this is a nature-based solution as well. But the thing about this one, it's in a city. So in a city, it's harder to really incorporate the nature aspect sometimes in a nature-based solution. And that's why I think it's a very mixed, it's 50-50 now, a very mixed answer, basically. But I think this is also nature-based, but it's a start do something bigger maybe as well. Maybe it's a good start, but something more has to happen. And that is it for me. I have one more, but I don't know if I have time left. Just
We don't really have much time left, so. But Cas, thanks a lot for showing these examples, and it's important that we together think about what we see as good nature-based solutions, or even what we see as nature-based solutions. Now I would like to introduce you to Wouter. Wouter is UN Youth Representative on Biodiversity and Food. So to protect biodiversity, we need to also change our food systems. Well, that's what Wouter is working on, while defending the interests and opportunities of young people. So thanks for being here, Wouter. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It was a very interesting discussion about what constitutes a nature-based solution and whatnot. So I will be here talking a bit about the role of youth. I was asked to say something about why is it important that youth are involved in biodiversity at all. I have prepared 5 reasons for that, just to show some of them, because I think youth and biodiversity are connected in many ways. The first of all is biodiversity is important for everyone, right? For whole of humanity. So why wouldn't youth also be involved with biodiversity? Second, is that the concerns about biodiversity will, of course, are still increasing, unfortunately. And its effects will, of course, also mainly be felt in the future when we, our youth, will be still around. So it's also something about the future that we as youth are concerned with. The third reason is that, of course, we are a majority. More than half of the world population is under 30 years old. But at the same time, the average world leader is a 59-year-old man. So youth should claim their rightful place as a majority shareholder in our planet and in our future. The fourth reason is that, of course, youth are creative and they have innovative ideas about these kinds of problems. And we'll take a look at some of them in a very short time and by some of the participants. And then the last reason is a little bit more of a story. So I think also that youth often hold fairness and justice in very high regard. I will give an example which I saw in Montreal in Canada. I was in Canada for the COP, for the Biodiversity Conference of the United Nations. And on the penultimate day, the day before the last day, they wanted to adopt a framework, a new biodiversity framework, to which almost all countries had agreed. But there was one country left that had not agreed yet, and it was still trying to change some things about the framework. That was the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And because all other countries agreed and people just wanted to finish it, the presidents of the COP decided to just adopt the framework without the agreement of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And many people, and I was around in the place where all the countries sit, and many people cheered and they were very happy that the framework was adopted. And they didn't really seem to care that there was one country that didn't agree with the proposal. And of course, the Democratic Republic of Congo is not just a country, it's an enormous country with a lot of biodiversity, a lot of rainforests, and also a colonial background. And then I walked to the youth, the place where all the young people were sitting in the hall. And they were not really happy, actually. They were confused and also sad that the democratic process had not been really triumphed. And I must also say that as a youth myself, I was also a bit disillusioned. But the youth were also hopeful that the agreement could have been made with the DRC. And they were right about it, because the next day, the DRC and the presidency seemed to have made a reconciliation, and the adoption was fine. And that's exactly why we need youth in the biodiversity debate. Young people care about fair practices. They know that biodiversity crisis is something that we can only solve together. And we cannot just leave people behind. And some people would call that naive. They think the way the world is just how it is. But I think that's very brave, and I think that's something we need in our future. And certainly in the view of our biodiversity crisis, we need young and brave people to step forward. Fortunately, we have some of those brave and young people here today, and I very much look forward to hearing their proposals for nature-based solutions. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Wouter. Well, thanks, Wouter. It was very inspiring and good to hear also your personal experiences on that. Well, let's move on to the next part of the webinar, as actually also introduced by you, Wouter. The pitches from the young people working on nature-based solutions and biodiversity, of course. Well, we will have 3 pitches. The first pitch is by Samara. So, Samara, you can join the stage here. Samara is from School Meets the Reef from Sri Lanka. She has won the Nature-Based Solutions Challenge with her team. And currently, she is also a global restoration steward. So, Samara, good luck with your presentation.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for having me here. So it's been a great pleasure to be part of the the Wageningen Student Challenge, because it was the main reason how we managed to get into the field of working with nature-based solutions and applying it to the coral reefs. So I'm here representing my team, School Meets the Reef, which is a team of 5 members, and of course others who have joined in hands to work and make it a successful project. So as you can see, our project has 2 parts, school and then the reef. So I will talk a bit more about it as we go on. So as I told you, we got into the student challenge last year, and we were thinking about what kind of nature-based solution can we apply in the context of Sri Lanka, because at the time we were going on a situation where the country was in economic crisis and the government did not really have any resources or funds to actually work on things that can actually enhance biodiversity. And me being quite familiar with the area of coral reefs and restorations, doing surveys for a few years, we thought the best solution that we can bring in is to this overlooked site, which is called Calcutta in Batticaloa district. This is situated on the eastern coast of Sri Lanka, which is highly overlooked and not been managed properly, and some of the reefs have been bleached and damaged by many reasons. So if I give an overview about the importance of the biodiversity that we can find in this area, is that there are 5 major coral species, ranging from Macropora branching corals to big dome corals such as Porites, and many reef fish, around 200 reef fish in this Calcutta site, and also quite around the area as well. And one thing very important is we have an endemic parrotfish called Colores racura, which can only be found in the eastern side of Sri Lanka, which is endemic to our country. So it's a very important site, therefore must be taken into consideration. And 2 endangered turtles are also laying eggs in this area. So it's a very important site and an overlooked site as well, because it brings a lot of deal to the people in the area for the blue economy. A lot of people depend on the fisheries, ornamental fishing, and also tourism, which has started to begin after 2009. And the other important thing is, of course, the coastal protection that it brings. But the problem, as I have to mention, there are a few threats. We have so many rivers in the small island which are going into the ocean, and this releases a lot of nutrients and a lot of sediment, which can damage corals and other coastal ecosystems. On top of that, the other threats that this particular site faces is damages to the branching corals, for instance, from fins, anchorage, dynamite fishing, these kinds of unhealthy activities. So we thought this is the perfect site for us to select and start our restoration. So with our work beginning in last July, we thought in order to maintain these different aspects of making sure that we touch upon things that can improve climate change and adaptation, mitigation, also looking at the disaster risk reduction prospect, upliftment of the blue economy, all these things taken into consideration, and also improving the marine biodiversity in the area. and maintaining sustainability in the long run, it's important that we rehabilitate the coral reefs and also pass down. I can give you an example. In the southern coast of Sri Lanka, we used to have large, like acres and hectares of coral reefs, which were damaged, which were mined, because people were not aware of the importance of it. And this mining industry only stopped after the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. So we don't want such a disaster to happen again, because people were not aware about the importance of safeguarding these reefs. So bringing it into the school curriculum is also a major part of our project. So just to highlight here, our project looks at this particular methodology where we used recycled concrete reef balls. At the moment, we have only put 3, but in the second phase, we are hoping to expand it. And 2 species of corals were attached to this, Acropora and Porites. We also had a nursery there, and on the day that we did this particular restoration, it was quite turbid. But during the next sessions, because we kept on continuously monitoring this site, so on the first monitoring session itself, we could see that small polyps, especially in Acropora, starting to grow, because it's one of the fast growing coral species compared to the other dome-shaped Porites. So we kept on doing these monitoring sessions because these are very important, because there's a lot of sedimentation. You could see the differences in the pictures. There's a lot of sedimentation, a lot of algal cover coming in, which needs to be taken out so that the corals are not smothered. So we managed to do 4 monitoring sessions so far. 2 months we couldn't do because of it's the off season. We can't really go into the water at that time. So the working, and hence why we want to expand it further. It's a cost-effective method, which is a very important part to consider. Then moving on to the ocean literacy for young stewards. We not only focus about the coral reefs here, but also the integration of all the other coastal ecosystems like mangroves, salt marshes, seagrass in the area. So we did several sessions in the vicinity, taught the students about the importance of taking care of these ecosystems, did some interactive sessions, because although these students live like 2 kilometers from the reef, some of them have never even seen underwater. So it was really inspirational for them to actually understand. And we did an introduction to scuba diving as a conservation methodology as well. So these are the major parts of our project. So I always have to say that this was not successful so far if it was not a partnership with all these people, the fisherman community, because it was at a time when we didn't have fuel to bring these reef balls into the water, and we had to use this traditional technique, this particular boat, as you can see in the picture, to drag these reef balls into the water. That support was taken from the fishermen, and their responsibility was given for them to keep on maintaining these reef balls, to take care of them. That responsibility was passed on. So there was a lot of organizations within Sri Lanka that we made hand in hand with, which was very important. And then, of course, these are my team members. I'm not the leader or anyone, but I want to say that we all work in harmony. And during the time when I was not in Sri Lanka, the other people who were there, they worked really hard to make sure that the project is working. And we are looking forward to the next phase of our project. Thank you very much. And these are some questions that I wanted to post. If you think about it, if there's any questions also, please let me know. Thank you. Over to you, David.
Yes, thanks a lot, Samara. We also put those questions in the chat so the audience can answer them, but also let other folks know. But I would also like to invite Lisa to provide the reflection.
Yeah, I just admire your project because it's so beautiful. I think it's also such a good example of what Wouter was talking about, of the power of youth and the power of connectedness and the power of stepping forward together and make it happen. So I I always tell my students here that, if people are cynical and it is so difficult, that, the only thing you can do is making a new step. And for me, it's very, heartwarming to see that you work with the local community, with different stakeholders in the community. I think that is really important. And I think what is so special is that you really implement the education part of it, because if we are able to just nudge the minds of people, and that they start seeing the beauty of a coral reef, and I cannot imagine anyone not being amazed by the beauty of underwater. That is the best ever thing to change behaviors of not throwing away plastics and whatever is threatening your system. So I think that is I just admire you, and I think it's also for the audience good to know. So I think at least I came to know about your story from the student challenge, but within half a year you made it to the COP in Egypt, and you were talking to all the political leaders that are really doing it, but you as youth really have the power to change. And I'm just sitting here next to Kaz, and he is also really proud of having helped you. And so I think that is where the change comes from this connection. So I wish you all the luck and keep going. It's the energy, it's the conviction that you can change the world that will change the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that. It's really a pleasure. I have to really thank Wageningen University, Miriam, Cass, everyone for this. So yeah, hoping for the next phase to start soon. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, both. Let's move on to the next presentation. And yes, perfect, thank you. And the next presentation is from Levis, and he has over half a decade of experience in coastal and marine resource management, and specifically in the active restoration of degraded mangroves. So we also just heard Cas about the mangroves in Curaçao, if I'm correct, but now we go to Kenya, because Levis, he co-founded the Syriop's Research Environmental Organization. He works on several projects in the blue economy. And on top of that, he is also an ocean restoration steward. So, Levis, I think you are in the room. So please open your microphone and camera so you can get started with your presentation. Yes, I see you're joining the room. So the floor is yours. Yes. Good to see you, Levis. I just introduced you. Maybe you missed it when switching from the room, but the floor is yours. You can get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Levis Sirikwa, and I'm from Kenya. Thank you very much for the previous insights on nature-based solutions. So I am from Kenya, and I represent Syriop's Environmental Research Organization. Syriop's is a non-profit youth-led organization offering the best mangrove restoration solutions in Kenya. So one thing that we are facing, the problem we are facing in the country is massive degradation of mangrove ecosystem. And we believe that when the habitat is destroyed, so are the livelihoods. So that means that the positive correlation means that the more mangroves are cut, then the more the communities living adjacent to the mangrove ecosystems lack or lose livelihoods in the aspect of what the ecosystem goods and services. So what do we do? The first thing that we have thought as Syriop's is we want to attract the bees. So we are using bees because bees are keystone species in the mangrove ecosystem, and also bees are primary pollinators in the mangrove ecosystem. So the trees are available, and the bees will produce the bee product, honey, for example. And these products are going to support to benefit human beings in terms of the nutritional value of the honey. And the other thing, the uniqueness about bees is that the ecosystem will be restored ecologically by itself, because when the bees support pollination, more seedlings are able to be produced, and the mangrove, the restoration or regeneration of the mangroves is accelerated. So that is an approach we are looking at. And then also it's answering the aspect of increased livelihood and increased income, both to the community and to the active players in the mangrove ecosystem. So the other option that we have taken in as CEOPS is actively restore the degraded ecosystem, because if we leave it to regenerate by itself, it may take a lot of time, and yet we have a demand on the goods and services from the mangroves. So we have mapped about 1,800 hectares of degraded open space, and we are targeting about 7.5 million planting these trees to be able to actively restore the degraded ecosystems. So we have put together two models. So the first model is we call it the $1 model. So our model is Mikoko na Jamii, which means Mikoko means mangrove and Jamii means community. So these models are informed by science, they are data driven, and they're technologically inspired. So we invest in quality seedlings, and then we follow specific standard operational procedures for planting, and then we monitor. So our focus as CEOPS, we want to grow the trees and not just to plant. So by being able to monitor these trees, it means that we get to understand how they grow, and then we are able to monitor. The second model is where we incorporate a livelihood aspect to the grown trees. So we call it greening the blue. So once we have planted, we monitored for about 18 months. We attach the livelihood component or a sustainability program to conserve, support the community to conserve, and motivate them to continue protecting the mangrove ecosystem. So the additional part is where now we are seeing, we want to attract the bees to the forest by installing hives. So the first model, one thing we have done is to enhance accountability. The $1 that is given in the first model is accounted for from different targets and aspects to ensure that everything in the mangrove space is every role is allocated resources, and it's done. So we work hand in hand with the community to ensure that all these needs are addressed and resources are allocated. For the second model, this is where we have the aspect of investment, return on investment. So we have various case scenarios depending on the interest of the partner. But the bottom line, the benefit sharing here is 50-50. The 50% that goes to the community is the farm gate price that a farmer will be enrolled, and then they will be supported, trained on how to produce honey, and then when they sell the honey, CEOPS and the investor work together to ensure that they do value addition to get the returns from the investment they have put in. So this is what the slide talks about. Then our social impact. When we restore 1 hectare of mangroves, using the second model, we will have like installed 15 hives, supported community supplementary programs. It could be microfinance or SACCOs, and put together at least 45 casual jobs. And in the process, we also like support education. Then our impact, we started off in 2019, and I must say that we are addressing several SDGs. SDG number 1, no poverty when we provide livelihoods. SDG number 2, zero hunger. When you have livelihoods, then people can put food on the table, the aspect of food security. SDG number 13, climate action. We all know mangroves play an integral role in carbon sequestration. Then SDG number 14, life below water. Mangrove ecosystem is part of the critical marine habitats. Okay, so this is our team. Our team is made up of young, resilient, innovative, vibrant, passionate people to their role. Our partners are as follows. We've been able to work together to do some restoration. However, our main partners are Kenya Forest Service, the government, and the community through community forest associations. So it's good to point out that without Kenya Forest Service and the community, it's very difficult to actively restore the mangroves. So the question that I would have for us is how would you define the blue economy at your own capacity as a stakeholder? Then do you think we are on the right track as young people based on what has been presented? And then also, what would you recommend? So thank you very much. In case there is any question, feel free to ask.
Thanks a lot, Levis. Excellent. Good to hear. Let me invite Cas to stage for a reflection, and also we put your questions in the chat so everybody is able to respond to them.
Yeah, thank you, Levis, for your pitch. I think it's a very nice example of a nature-based solution. It's very cool to see as well how fast it can go. And within a few years, we would have, what was it, 150 hectares of mangrove restored. And I think it's also very nice to see how the local people are involved in the project. How you create a livelihood for them, and that you also look further than just restoring or placing mangroves, but also look at the pollinators, the bees, and look at the bigger picture, the ecosystem as well. So yeah, very cool to see. Yeah, what else? How can I say that? Yeah, I think overall it's just a very cool project, and you're on the right track. You're definitely on the right track. And like the School Meets the Reef team, inspiration from a project like this is very big. I think for me at least it is. So yeah, keep on going with something like this, with a project. I don't know if the other speakers want to add something here.
Yeah, I saw a question in the chat about the species of mangrove trees. Davis, maybe you
yes, I can answer that. Yes, we are restoring. We are using about 4 species. The first one is Syriop stagal, the yellow mangrove. The second one is Rhizophorum pronata, the red mangrove. The third one is Brugueria gymnohyza, normally referred to as the black mangrove. And then Avicennia marina, the gray or the white mangrove. The attempts to do Soneratia alba, Xylocarpus granatum, Xylocarpus mollucensis, and Heritera littoralis. We are actually doing a research to be able to include those added last 3 species in the nursery. So those are the species that we restore.
Great, thanks a lot for this elaboration. Actually, we have room for one more question, and I also see one question popping up in the chat, so that's perfect. The question is the following: would it also be interesting to monitor the fish, etc., returning into the ecosystem?
Yes, we have plans for that. Because we are working with different ecosystems, like we are working with the peri-urban mangroves in Mombasa, and the mangroves in Kenya are fragmented. The other place is Kwale in the southern part. So we are putting together proposals to be able to do some research to confirm that.
All right, thanks a lot for those elaborations. So ladies, if you could also maybe put your contact details in the chat, then people can also reach out to you. But for now, I request you to close this tab and re-enter the webinar so that we can welcome the next speaker. But thanks a lot, Levis. Excellent.
Okay.
So
okay.
our next guest is Caleb, and Caleb, he actually made his own accurate and comprehensive list of all amphibians in Ghana. That made him one of the first biologists in Ghana to research amphibians. And next to that, he has won the Future for Nature Award in 2014. So during Caleb's fieldwork, he found species that actually had never been described before. And even more surprisingly, he rediscovered amphibian populations that were thought to be extinct. So Caleb, very happy to have you here. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. And very good afternoon to all of you around the world. Yeah, so it's such a short time, so I'm just going to go into the slides. I assume I was introduced already. So I'm going to tell you why amphibian conservation. Okay. All right. So a bit of a story. I was born into a national park. Literally, I grew up in a national park. My father, which you can see in this old photo here, was a park ranger who rose through the ranks to become a park warden. And so I spent my childhood having this amazing interaction with wildlife. But I also had a very special bond with my father because he took care of me. He would take me to wild places to spend some time and look at all these amazing wildlife species. But unfortunately, when I was only 7 years old and he was only 45 years, he died under very mysterious circumstances. And I felt the vacuum, of losing such a dear loved one. And as a child, I really didn't understand what it means that somebody has died. And I felt like, there must be something that I could do to bring him back. I was thinking that if I made a lot of money as I grew up, I could find a way to restore that relationship. It was later, when I grew up and understood that death is irreplaceable. And so as a person, I'm very sensitive to things that cannot be replaced, such as species extinction. And this is what led me to amphibian conservation. So as you can see, I came across in 2005 the fact that amphibians were going through a mass extinction. And I was surprised that nothing was being done in my country about it. I thought that this should be headline news. These animals are going extinct and nobody cares about them. So I knew that I needed to act and I needed to do something about them. But of course, being the very first person in my country to have this crazy idea of working to save so-called slimy animals, it was a very difficult task. I had to begin by trying to do an inventory of all the species we had and their populations and how to prioritize which one to focus my conservation attention on. And this was very interesting. And along this career path, I've been fortunate to discover and describe several new species, including my favorite one here, which is the one that's called the Fiaprago puddle frog, which I named after my dear mother. Now, one important discovery that we made as a team was the rediscovery of this frog called the Togo slippery frog. The Togo slippery frog is an evolutionarily distinct species. It can whistle like a human being. It's amazing. It's really a very amazing frog, and it was believed to be extinct for almost 40 years until we rediscovered a very small population. When we discovered this population, it was already regular food for the local people, and there were only about 156 individuals in the area that we found them. So I knew that I needed to put a plan in place if this species will be saved. And so I acted accordingly. But of course, another threat was also the cutting down of the trees. This frog required forested rivers that have forests around them to be able to survive. And this forest vegetation is very important for their breeding. And these trees were frequently locked by the local people. Now, how do you get people interested and involved in doing anything at all to save a frog species? This was a very challenging task. As a young conservationist, I did a lot of study in this community, and I realized that the community is very polarized. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust any information. It's very easy that you be tagged as being of one political fashion or the other. But on the other hand, the community is very religious. They go to church and mosques, about 98% of them. And I decided that using the avenue of the church to put across my conservation message was probably the best thing to do. And I can say a lot about this, but basically this is what I did. By visiting the churches and making appeal to them and trying to use scriptures and Quran verses that talk about conservation and the need for us to act. In response, okay, so I cut 5 years of work into this single slice. In response to years of work with these communities, establishing volunteer groups, schools, outreaches, etc., the local people donated a lot of land for us to protect this frog and other animal species. So now here in the green are the core areas of this reserve, about 12,000 acres in all. And this protects the water sources, over 20,000 people, and protect 12 additional IUCN threatening species. And this was all donated freely by the local people. Now, unfortunately, most of the area donated have already been heavily degraded in the past by different activities, logging, farming. And so our nature-based solution to this is to work with all these local people to replant the forest. And we are replanting the forest with three main considerations. We are replanting native trees that have huge economic benefit to the local people, including this apple that you see here that is already flowering, and these other precursor trees. And then we are also planting back some of the critically endangered species of trees that have been lost in the landscape. So we're achieving the biodiversity target. We are making sure that communities have benefit from our tree planting. And of course, it brings a lot of job to the local communities as well. Here we show some of the trees that were planted just 2 years ago along some of the rivers that the Togo slippery frog inhabits, and it's already doing amazingly well. Well, the last thing that we have done to support our project and the community is to develop an ecotourism product, which has been a game changer for our project. It's called the Amejope Canopy Walkway. In the chat, you can look at all the amazing videos that we have on Instagram and on YouTube. And this ecotourism project is estimated to bring about 20,000 people to this village. There are days that we have as much as 800 people visiting, and 60% of the revenue goes to the landowners who have donated land for this project to build schools and provide clean water for the people. So, well, there's so much I can say with our project, but the time is so short, and I will have to stop here. But I look forward to hearing your questions and chatting some more if time allows us. So you go to the chat. I believe it's already there, and then you can learn more about our project, etc., etc. Thank you so much.
Caleb, thank you so much for your very inspiring presentation. And I also took a look at the resources that have been sent in the chat. Very nice visuals and other resources. So thanks a lot. Let me ask Wouter to give a reflection. And meanwhile, the chat is open for others to also think along and to provide their reflections. Wouter, I'm not hearing you yet. I do see you. Wouter, you are still muted. At least in the chat, I can already see some very positive responses to your presentation, Caleb. But I think Wouter's mic is working maybe now. I see the audio button doesn't work. Maybe I can invite some of the other speakers in the room to provide a reflection, and still, meanwhile, the chat is open. Yes, Lisa.
It's such a touching story. I feel how you really feel, in your story, you really feel how your memories of being a child in that area where you really, learned with the love of your father, the love for nature, and how you turned it now in your daily practice, and how you also diversify step by step and grow the project step by step. I can only admire how you do it and how you do that, together with the people. And I was thinking of how it would be to see you in your field work, trying to hunt for the frogs, and I think you will also recognize some maybe by sound. Yeah, so I can imagine that is really very, very special to be out there in the wild, and how cool to see that because of your efforts, you are just restoring this big part of nature in Ghana, and it's only one of the few countries in Africa that I have been in. I know how beautiful it is, so I have sweet memories, and I can only say that I this is so brave, because it's also I know that also how much it takes day by day to really get it going. And my only concern is that don't bring in too many people, because if you have more people than the village can accommodate, that's a pity. So maybe you should try to that would be my hope for your project, that you don't destroy that single village, but maybe the next step is to expand to another area where you could take that approach, or maybe to other areas in Western Africa where you can do it. But big compliment, and I can only bow deeply for your courage, and it's just so beautiful to see that it starts with your deep love for nature and your deep love for your father. It's really touching. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Tisha. I think my audio is working now.
Wouter, we still don't hear you.
Still don't hear me.
No.
Wouter, we do. I hear you. Now we hear you, yeah.
Okay, I think I hear from someone else that I am audible. And Caleb is not as well. So I'll just start. Sorry about that.
So David, what do you want from us?
Okay, Liesje, if you can turn off your microphone and speaker, then I can give the floor to Wouter once. Yes, thank you. So, Wouter.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about, I don't know what happened. Just the audio didn't go on, but I rejoined. And yeah, I think Liesje said most of it. It was such a beautiful story, Caleb. It was such an authentic story. I always, when people focus on like a very specific group of animals in some country, that's really cool. I think it really shows your passion. And also it's such a personal story. And I get the feeling that you use this personal story in your conservation efforts, because you also said you were involved a lot in the religious community, and that's really playing to your strength and using this personal story, which is so beautiful to help nature, and I think that's really unique, and I think it's really cool. And I also think it's a very good example of how we really need whole of society. We need every sector, we need every community to help in this effort of biodiversity, because it has to do with almost everything in our society. And religious groups are part of it as well, and I think they're often ignored. But going towards them and seeing that they have such a central role in this place, in the environment, taking that up and think, okay, I'm gonna join this community and talk about this. And using that personal story, I think it's a very smart way and very innovative way to do something for nature. So yeah, I really hope that I see that the plants are growing well. I hope also that the number of frogs and toads are also increasing. That would be something I would be interested in. Yes, thanks so much for this very moving story.
Yes, I fully agree with that. So thanks a lot, Wouter, Caleb. It's time for me to give the word back to Miriam to provide some more information on the upcoming Nature-Based Future Challenge. So Miriam, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, David. And thank you so much to all of our speakers and all the hopeful stories that we have heard today. I think everybody will agree on that. With this, we have come to the end of this webinar. For myself, the Biodiversity and Nature-Based Solutions journey started with the Nature-Based Solutions Challenge last year, where 8 teams like the School Meets the Reef team of Samara in Sri Lanka started their projects. Well, this year we are organizing some webinars and masterclasses. And for next year, we invite all youth student teams to participate in the Nature-Based Future Challenge. You see it on screen now. It's the assignment is to design and visualize a nature-based future for the Bangladesh River Delta in 2100. We'll ask you to design maps, visuals, and transformation pathways. There is a lot of information already available on the website, so I invite you. I will ask David to put it in the chat, or I will do that later on. But very quickly, the timeline. So we are now in the webinar phase, and in November 2023 we start the registration. We have a pre-selection moments, and then the grand finale will be in June 2024. And we all expect many more inspiring projects by youth. So think about it. We will send all of you an email with the recording and also with some more information on the Nature-Based Future Challenge. With this, I want to end the webinar. Thank you all for your attention. And we will close off with the video about the Nature-Based Future Challenge, and hope to see you in the next webinars and as a participant in the challenge. Thank you so much.
Wageningen University and Research presents the Nature-Based Future Challenge, a global competition for the brightest young minds to create a better future for all. Climate change and biodiversity loss are amongst the biggest challenges of our times and put our future food security under threat. To ensure a prosperous future, there is a strong need for transformative change towards a nature-inclusive society. This calls for new, out-of-the-box solutions, nature-based solutions. Therefore, Wageningen University and Research calls young changemakers from around the world to develop an innovative perspective for future generations for one of the most dynamic regions in the world. A river delta that is one of the world's most densely populated and fertile areas. With an abundance of wildlife and mangrove forest, and extremely disaster-prone. The Ganges-Brahmaputra Meghna Delta in Bangladesh. The Nature-Based Future Challenge. Join us to create a better future for all. Develop a nature-based future vision for the Bangladesh Delta.